I thought I knew what fear tasted like. I'd swallowed it every morning for 16 years. But nothing prepared me for the moment he looked at me like I mattered. The morning began like every other, cold, cruel, and colorless. Until the Alpha King walked through the door, I was never meant to darken. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Now let's get to the story. It was barely past dawn when I heard them, boots. Dozens of them, echoing down the corridor outside the servants' wing like war drums announcing execution. My hands stilled in the wash water, pink with diluted blood from the stone floors I'd been scrubbing since before the sun remembered how to rise. My heart dropped into my stomach. We weren't supposed to exist today. Alpha King Kaedan Arden himself was touring Redclaw Pack, and Madame Corvina had made it violently clear what would happen if any Omega dared to be seen. Invisible. Silent. Less than shadows. I scrubbed harder at the stain near the hearth. Blood from last night's lesson when I'd spilled the Luna's tea. My own blood, actually. The overseer's boot had done its job, grinding my hand into the flagstone until something cracked and the teacup shattered. The memory made my knuckles ache where they were split open from lye soap and punishment. I could still hear Luna Ria's voice. Clumsy Omega filth. You don't deserve the air you waste. The other servants had dragged me away before she could do worse, but the uniform I wore now stuck to the welts on my back, heavy with yesterday's fear. But pain was familiar. Pain was honest. Pain never promised kindness and then delivered cruelty instead. I had learned to prefer it. The footsteps stopped, just outside the kitchen door. Then the door creaked open. I dropped the brush and fell to my knees so fast my bones cracked against stone. My forehead pressed to the floor, still damp with blood water. My neck bent in submission, the posture beaten into me since childhood. Don't speak. Don't breathe too loud. Don't exist. Forgive me, my lord, I whispered to the stones. I did not mean to disturb. Silence swallowed my words. Heavy, suffocating silence that made my pulse roar in my ears. I could hear my own heartbeat, frantic, rabbit-fast, desperate. Somewhere in the fortress above, voices echoed. Laughter. The visiting court. But here in this kitchen there was only breathing. His and mine. I waited for the blow. A boot to the ribs. Maybe worse. High-ranking wolves didn't tolerate Omega presence, especially not ones foolish enough to be caught working where royalty might wander. My body tensed, bracing for impact. Look at me. The voice was deep, controlled, alpha-quiet in a way that made every instinct in my body scream contradictions. Submit. Run. Wait. Hide. But looking at ranked wolves meant punishment. Had always meant pain. My lungs refused to work. I won't hurt you, he said, softer this time, though the command remained. Look at me. Something inside me trembled. Something that hadn't stirred in years, maybe ever. Slowly, so slowly my neck muscles burned with the effort of disobedience. I lifted my gaze from the floor. He was tall. Impossibly tall, wrapped in armor that caught the firelight and turned it into liquid midnight. Blue-black metal etched with silver runes I couldn't read. His shoulders filled the doorway. His presence filled the room, pressing against my lungs like gravity had doubled. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Storm gray. Clear and cold as winter clouds frozen mid-roar, framed by dark lashes and a face carved from something harsher than marble. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, disappearing into black hair that fell just past his collar. He looked like war and winter and something ancient that had forgotten how to die. And when those eyes locked onto mine, his entire body went rigid. His breath caught, audible, sharp like he'd been struck. The air between us shifted. Live. Humming. Recognizing. You, he whispered, and his voice cracked around the word like something breaking open. His expression transformed. Hardness melting into wonder, into hunger, into something that looked almost like relief. There you are. Who are you? He asked, stepping forward before I could collapse back into submission. No one, my lord, I stammered. I'm only. Your name. I hesitated. We didn't have names. Not real ones. Madame Corvina called me rat when she was feeling generous. Other things when she wasn't. I don't. The truth tasted like ash. I'm just a servant, my lord. I shouldn't be here. I'll leave. Stay. One word. Absolute. His eyes traveled down, cataloging. My split knuckles, the bruise yellowing on my collarbone where my uniform had slipped, the way I held my left arm slightly away from my body because my ribs still ached from last week. His jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. When he spoke again, his voice had gone dangerously soft. Who did this to you? I deserved it, I said automatically. The words Madame Corvina had drilled into me for 16 years. I was careless. I make mistakes. Good omegas except there. No. The word cut through the air like a blade through silk. No one, he said slowly, each syllable deliberate and edged with barely contained fury, deserves to be broken like this. Before I could respond, before I could even process what was happening, he moved. One heartbeat he was across the kitchen. The next, he was in front of me, close enough that I could smell him. Pine smoke and winter wind and something wild that made my skin prickle with awareness I didn't understand. His hand rose and I flinched. He froze. Pain flashed across his face. Actual pain, like my fear had physically hurt him. I'm not going to hurt you, he murmured. His hand hovering in the air between us. May I? I didn't understand the question. No one had ever asked before. Trembling, I nodded. His fingers were gentle, impossibly gentle, as they tilted my chin toward the morning light streaming through the high windows. He studied my face like he was memorizing a map, his thumb barely grazing the bruise on my cheekbone. How long? His voice had gone rough. How long have they been doing this to you? Always, I whispered, because it was the only truth I knew. His eyes closed briefly. When they opened again, they were blazing with silver light. Wolf light, the kind that only came from alphas of ancient bloodlines. And that's when I realized. The armor with no crest. The command that needed no title. The way the very air seemed to bend around him in deference. This wasn't a royal guard. This was him. Alpha King Kaedan Arden. Ruler of the 7 moons. The cold king who'd never taken a mate, who'd crushed rebellions with his bare hands, whose name made even Luna Ria's voice tremble. And he was looking at me. Me, a nameless omega washed in her own blood, like I was the first dawn he'd seen after 1,000 years of darkness. What's your real name? He asked. His hand still cradling my face like I was something precious instead of something discarded. I opened my mouth to answer, but the words dissolved on my tongue. Because I didn't know. I had been Rat and Omega and you there for so long that whatever name my mother had given me, whoever I had been before Redclaw Pack broke me into pieces, had been buried beneath 16 years of silence and survival. I don't remember, I admitted, and the shame of it burned hotter than any of Luna Ria's punishments. But the Alpha King didn't look disgusted. He looked furious. Then we'll find it, he said softly. We'll find every piece of you they tried to erase. And in that moment, as dawn light turned his armor to liquid silver and something ancient hummed awake in my chest, I realized that my life, the small, suffocating life I'd learned to survive, was about to shatter completely. I just didn't know yet whether I'd survive what came after. The whispers started before I even made it back to the servants' quarters. They slithered through the corridors like smoke, carried on the breath of every omega who'd seen me walk out of that kitchen still breathing. By the time I reached the sleeping hall, a cramped stone room lined with straw pallets that reeked of mildew and fear, every eye was on me. You spoke to him, Mari hissed, her face pale as she grabbed my arm. She was the closest thing I had to a friend, though friendship among servants was a luxury we couldn't afford. Bean, what were you thinking? I didn't. My voice came out strangled. He asked me to. It doesn't matter what he asked. Old Greta sat up from her pallet, bones creaking. Her left eye was milky white from a beating she'd received decades ago. You looked at him. You spoke. Madame Corvina already knows. The words hit me like a fist to the stomach. Course she knew. Madame Corvina knew everything that happened in Redclaw's servant halls. She had eyes everywhere. Omega spies who traded information for an extra scrap of bread, for one less beating, for the cruel mercy of her favor. "She's going to kill you," Mari whispered, and tears streaked down her dirt-smudged face. "Bean, she's going to make an example of you." I wanted to tell her it would be fine, that I'd survived worse. But my tongue felt thick and useless in my mouth because we both knew what happened to servants who drew attention. Last year, a girl named Penny had accidentally brushed against a visiting beta's cloak. They'd found her body in the well 3 days later. The door slammed open. Madame Corvina filled the doorway, her massive frame blocking out the torchlight from the hall. She was a woman built like a war hammer, broad, brutal, and efficient at breaking things. Her graying hair was pulled back so tight it stretched her face into a permanent snarl. "You," she growled, pointing one thick finger at me. "Out. Now." Every servant in the room dropped their gaze. Mari's hand slipped from my arm. I walked toward my death on legs that barely held me. She didn't hit me in the sleeping hall. That would have been a mercy, quick, public, over with. Instead, she dragged me by my hair down 3 flights of stairs to the punishment cellar, a windowless room that smelled of old blood and newer fear. "You stupid girl," she snarled, throwing me against the stone wall. My shoulder cracked against it, sending lightning through my already bruised ribs. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I'm sorry," I gasped, but her hand closed around my throat. "The Alpha King," she hissed, her face inches from mine. Spittle flecked my cheek. "You dared to show your filthy face to the Alpha King. You dared to speak to him like you're anything other than dirt beneath his boots." Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. Her grip was crushing my windpipe. I clawed at her wrist uselessly. "I should kill you right now," she whispered. "Snap your worthless neck and tell Lunaria you fell down the stairs. No one would question it. No one would care." My lungs screamed for air. The world started to gray at the edges. Then, from somewhere above us, a voice called out. Cold, commanding, absolutely unmistakable. "Where is she?" Madame Corvina's grip loosened just enough for me to drag in a desperate breath. "The Omega," the Alpha King's voice echoed down the stairwell, closer now. "The one from the kitchen. Bring her to me. Now." Madame Corvina's face went through a series of rapid transformations. Rage, confusion, calculation, and finally, something that looked almost like fear. She released my throat and I collapsed to the floor, coughing. "Get up," she hissed at me, but her voice had lost its edge. "Get up and make yourself presentable. If you embarrass this pack in front of the king, I'll gut you myself." She hauled me upright and shoved me toward the stairs. 10 minutes later, I stood in the king's temporary quarters, trying not to shake visibly. The room was nothing like the servants' wing. Thick carpets covered the stone floors. Tapestries depicting wolf hunts and ancient battles hung from the walls. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to roast a full deer. And standing by the window, silhouetted against the morning light, was him. Alpha King Kaedan turned when I entered, and his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, swept over me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Leave us," he said to the guards flanking the door. "Your Majesty, protocol requires." One began. "Leave us." They left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. "Come here," he said quietly. I obeyed because I didn't know how not to. My feet carried me across the carpet until I stood 3 paces from him, close enough to see the concern etched into his features, far enough that I wouldn't accidentally touch him and damn myself further. "Show me your throat," he said, his voice dangerously soft. My hand automatically rose to cover the bruises I knew were already forming. "Show me." I lowered my hand. Shame burned through me, hot and acidic. I was marked. Damage. Even more worthless than before. His jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. "Who?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, and then his fingers were there again. Gentle, impossibly gentle, tilting my chin to examine the purple fingerprints circling my neck. "Give me a name." "She was doing her job," I whispered. "I broke the rules. I deserved." "If you say you deserved this one more time," he interrupted, his voice dropping to something raw and dangerous, "I'm going to lose what little restraint I have left." I fell silent. He studied my face for a long moment, then stepped back, running a hand through his dark hair. "I'm assigning you to my personal service while I'm here." My heart stopped. "What?" "You'll assist my attendants. Bring meals, tend the fire, whatever tasks they assign you." His eyes met mine, and there was something fierce burning in them. "It will keep you close. It will keep you safe. But the Luna, Madame Corvina, they'll think." "I don't care what they think." He moved to a side table and poured water from a crystal pitcher into a cup. "Drink this." I took it with trembling hands and raised it to my lips. "Wait." His hand shot out, stopping me. He took the cup back, sniffed it, then his expression darkened. "Where did this water come from?" "The servants' well, I assume." "And you drink from it?" "Every day." I nodded, confused. He set the cup down with deliberate care, then moved to a leather satchel near the bed. When he returned, he held a small vial filled with amber liquid. "What's this?" My stomach dropped. "How did you?" "One of my scouts saw an overseer forcing it down your throat this morning." His voice was deceptively calm. "What is it?" "Tonic," I whispered. "We all take it. Every day. It's supposed to keep us healthy. Keep us from getting sick. It's not medicine." He uncorked the vial and the scent hit me immediately. Bitter, acrid, wrong. "It's wolfsbane, mixed with silvervine and mountain ash." The words meant nothing to me. "I don't understand." "They've been suppressing your wolf." He set the vial down like it burned him. "Since you were a child, I'd wager. This mixture would keep a wolf dormant, locked so deep inside you that you'd never feel it, never shift, never access even a fraction of your natural strength." My knees went weak. "But why?" "That," he said grimly, "is exactly what I intend to find out." The investigation began within the hour. Alpha King Kaedan summoned Lunaria to his quarters, and I was ordered to stay, to stand in the corner like a piece of furniture and serve wine if requested. It was a common enough practice with servants. We were supposed to be invisible, beneath notice. But I'd never been so terrified to be invisible in my life. Lunaria swept into the room in a gown of deep crimson, her auburn hair piled high, diamonds glittering at her throat. She was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, sharp, cold, deadly. "Your Majesty," she purred, offering a graceful bow. "To what do I owe this honor?" "Your Omega servants," Kaedan said without preamble. "They're being given wolfsbane suppressants." "Why?" Ria's expression didn't flicker. "Wolfsbane. Your Majesty, I assure you." "Don't." The single word cracked like a whip. "I have the vial. I've had it tested. I want to know why Omegas in your pack are being systematically poisoned." Delicate pause. Then Ria laughed, a light musical sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, that. Your Majesty, you must understand we're a poor pack. We can't afford to have our servants shifting during their cycles, damaging property, hurting themselves. The suppressant is a kindness. It keeps them safe, keeps them calm. It keeps them weak," Kaedan corrected, his voice lethal. "It keeps them controllable. They're Omegas." Ria's smile never wavered. "Controlling them is precisely the point. Surely your Majesty understands pack hierarchy." "I understand," he interrupted, "that what you're describing is a violation of wolf law. The Covenant of the Seven Moons explicitly forbids chemical suppression of pack members' wolves without consent and oversight. These are servants, not pack members. They are wolves." He stood, and the room seemed to shrink around his presence. "Every wolf, regardless of rank, is entitled to their wolf. That is not negotiable." Ria's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of something cold and calculating in her eyes. Of course, Your Majesty. If the practice concerns you, I'll order it stopped immediately. An oversight on our part, truly. We've always done things this way, but if it violates your laws. She spread her hands apologetically. Consider it remedied. Kaedan studied her for a long moment. See that it is. After she left, the room felt colder despite the fire. She's lying, I whispered before I could stop myself. The king turned to me, one eyebrow raised. You think so? I know so. The words tumbled out. I've seen her face when she lies to the Alpha, to her mate. It's the same look. She's gonna keep doing it. She'll just hide it better. Yes, he agreed quietly. She will. Then why? Because now she knows I'm watching. He moved toward me, his expression softening. And because I needed her to underestimate what I'm willing to do to protect you. The way he said you, singular specific like I was a person instead of a problem, made something crack open in my chest. You should stop the tonic, he continued. Today. No more suppressants. Terror flooded through me. But if my wolf wakes up, if I can't control it, you'll learn. I could hurt someone. I could. You won't. He stepped closer, and his scent wrapped around me like a blanket. Your wolf has been caged for too long. When she wakes, she'll be confused, maybe frightened. But she won't be violent. Not unless you're threatened. How do you know? His smile was sad. Because I can feel her already. Underneath all that fear and pain, there's something strong in you. Something they tried very hard to kill. His hand rose, hovering near my face but not quite touching. Let her live, Earleen. Froze. What did you call me? He blinked, surprised at himself. Earleen. I don't know why. It just felt right. Earleen. The name settled over me like a half-remembered dream. Not bean. Not rat. Not you there. Earleen. Say it again, I whispered. Earleen. And for the first time in 16 years I felt like a person. That night, I stood in the small courtyard behind the servants' quarters, staring up at the moon. It was full, or nearly so, hanging fat and silver in the sky like a watchful eye. I'd never been allowed to look at it before. Madame Corvina said it made Omegas restless, gave them ideas above their station. But tonight I looked, and the moon looked back. Something stirred in my chest. Not pain, not fear, but something else. Something that had been sleeping for so long I'd forgotten it existed. My wolf. She was there, beneath layers of poison and conditioning, beneath years of beatings and silence. Weak, fragmented, barely a whisper of what she should be. But alive. Alive. The moon pulled at my blood like a tide, and I felt her answer. A soft howl that never quite reached my throat, a promise that we would both learn to be whole again. Behind me in the fortress, I heard footsteps. Madame Corvina, probably, come to drag me back inside. But I didn't move. For the first time in my life, I stood under the moon and refused to hide. And the moon, ancient, patient, eternal, whispered a secret into my bones. You are more than they made you believe. You are moonfire. And you are waking up. The second punishment came 3 days later. I'd known it was coming. Madame Corvina had been watching me with the patience of a cat outside a mouse hole, waiting for me to make one small mistake she could capitalize on. And I'd given her exactly what she needed. I'd stumbled while carrying the Luna's breakfast tray, sloshing tea onto the silver platter. It hadn't touched the Luna's gown. Hadn't even reached the table. But it was enough. The iron rod came down across my back 6 times before the king's guard interrupted, summoned by Kaedan's orders that I was to be brought to his quarters immediately if I was disciplined again. Now I stood in his chambers, trembling and trying not to bleed on his expensive carpet, while he stared at the guards with an expression that could have frozen the sun. Get out, he said quietly. They left so fast they nearly tripped over each other. The door clicked shut. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. Let me see, Kaedan said, his voice carefully controlled. It's nothing, Your Majesty. I've had worse. Let me see. I turned slowly, presenting my back to him. My uniform was stuck to the wounds, Fabric fused to skin by drying blood. Even the small movement of breathing sent pain lancing through me. I heard his sharp intake of breath. Then more quietly, "I'm going to kill her." "Please don't," I whispered. "It will only make things worse when you leave." "When I leave." He repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "You think I'm going to leave you here?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "You're the Alpha King. You have to leave eventually. And when you do..." I didn't finish. I didn't need to. Footsteps crossed the room. Cabinet opened. Glass clinked against glass. When he returned, he carried a basin of water, clean cloths, and several small bottles that smelled of herbs and something sharper. Medicine. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the chair near the fire. I obeyed, lowering myself carefully onto the cushioned seat. The luxury of it, sitting on furniture instead of stone floors, felt wrong, dangerous, like I was playing at being something I wasn't. Kaedan knelt behind me. Alpha King. Ruler of the 7 moons. Commander of armies. Kneeling. "This is going to hurt," he warned. "I need to remove your uniform to clean the wounds properly." My hands clenched in my lap. "I can do it myself. You can't reach." His hands were gentle as they found the hem of my uniform top. "May I?" That question again. May. Like my permission mattered. Like I had the right to say no to him. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He lifted the fabric slowly, carefully peeling it away from wounds that had already started to scab. Each inch sent fresh agony screaming across my nerves, but I bit down on my lip and refused to make a sound. Servants didn't cry. Crying earned more punishment. The uniform came free. Cool air hit my bare back and I heard him inhale sharply, then go utterly, dangerously still. "Earleen," he breathed, and something in his voice made my blood run cold. What is this? What?" Panic spiked through me. Is it bad? Is it infected? Turned toward the fire. Slowly. I shifted, angling my back toward the firelight. Behind me I heard him move. Standing, stepping closer, his shadow falling across me. "By the moon and stars," he whispered. "It can't be." "What?" My voice cracked. "What's wrong with me?" "Nothing's wrong." His fingers hovered over my left shoulder blade, not quite touching. "Earleen, you have a mark. A birthmark or..." "No, not a birthmark. Something deeper." "I don't understand." "Look." He crossed to a mirror on the wall, full length, framed in silver, and angled it so I could see my own reflection. I'd never seen my full back before. Servants didn't have mirrors. But now, with the firelight dancing across my skin, I saw it clearly. A mark between my shoulder blades, spanning the width of my palm. A silver crescent moon intertwined with a flame, both seeming to glow with their own faint light. Not quite white, not quite blue, but something in between. The lines were delicate, intricate, beautiful, and absolutely impossible. "I don't." My voice died. "I've never seen that before." "The wolfsbane," Kaedan murmured, circling back to examine it more closely. "It must have been suppressing it, hiding it. But now that the suppressant is leaving your system." His fingers finally made contact, tracing the edge of the mark with reverence that made my breath catch. "Earleen, do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "It's the Moonfire crest." His voice was hushed, almost awed. "The royal seal of the Moonfire bloodline." The name meant nothing to me. "I don't know what that..." "A royal house," he continued, still staring at the mark like it held all the answers to questions he'd been asking for years. "One of the oldest, most powerful bloodlines in wolf history. They ruled the Eastern Territories for 300 years until..." He stopped abruptly. "Until what?" His eyes met mine in the mirror. "Until the War of Cinders. 23 years ago." Something shifted in my chest. 23 years. I was 22. What happened in the war? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "Betrayal." His jaw clenched. The Moonfire Queen and her mate were murdered by members of their own court, nobles who feared their power and wanted to claim the eastern territories for themselves. The royal family was slaughtered. Every last one of them. He paused. Or so everyone believed. The room tilted. I gripped the chair to steady myself. You think I couldn't even finish the sentence. It was too absurd. I think, he said carefully, that someone smuggled you out before the massacre. I think someone hid you in the last place anyone would look, in plain sight, as a servant in a minor pack, suppressed and beaten until you forgot who you were. No. The word burst out of me. No, that's impossible. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I'm just. You're Moonfire, he insisted. Earleen, this mark doesn't lie. Can't be faked or copied. It's written into your very soul. Stop. I stumbled to my feet, ignoring the pain that screamed across my back. Just stop. I know what you're doing. His brow furrowed. What am I doing? You pity me. My voice broke. You found some scarred Omega, and now you're inventing a fairy tale to make yourself feel better about the fact that you can't actually fix what's broken. You're not broken. I am. The shout tore out of me, raw and desperate. I'm broken and used and worthless, and making up stories about royal bloodlines doesn't change that. It doesn't erase 16 years of being told I'm nothing. It doesn't heal. My voice cracked. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Kaedan crossed the distance between us in 2 strides. His hands framed my face, gentle, always so impossibly gentle, forcing me to meet his storm-gray eyes. Listen to me, he said, his voice low and fierce. I don't pity you. I've never pitied you. What I feel when I look at you is... He struggled for words. Rage at what they did. Awe at what you survived. And absolute certainty that you are the strongest person I've ever met. You don't know me. I know that you're standing here arguing with me instead of cowering on the floor. I know that despite everything they did to break you, you're still fighting. That's not weakness, Earleen. That's power they couldn't destroy no matter how hard they tried. The tears came then, hot and shameful, spilling down my cheeks. I'm scared, I whispered. If you're right, if I'm really what you say I am, then that means... I couldn't finish. Couldn't voice the terror. It means you matter, he finished softly. Means people died to keep you safe. It means the prophecy was real. What prophecy? His thumb traced my cheekbone, wiping away tears. The Moonfire Oracle spoke it the night before the massacre. When the lost moon rises, blood and fire will unite the broken kingdoms under one throne. The Eastern Tribunal has spent 2 decades making sure that prophecy died with your family. But I don't want to unite kingdoms, I said desperately. I don't want to be important. I just want to. What? The question hung unspoken between us. What did I want? I'd spent so long surviving that I'd forgotten to want anything beyond the absence of pain. You don't have to decide anything tonight, Kaedan said quietly. But I need you to understand something. Whether you claim your heritage or not, whether you believe me or not, you are in danger. If the people who killed your family discover you're alive, they'll finish the job. Yes. I pulled away from his touch, wrapping my arms around myself. My back throbbed with every breath. So what do? You let me protect you. He moved to the basin, wringing out a cloth. You let me investigate who in Redclaw Pack knew what you were and helped hide you. And you let me teach you to be strong enough to protect yourself. I don't know how to be strong. Yes, you do. He returned to me, cloth in hand. You've been strong every day of your life. You just didn't know that's what it was called. He tended my wounds with the care of someone handling precious glass. Each touch of the medicine-soaked cloth burned, but I didn't flinch. Between the pain, he told me stories. About the Moonfire Queen, who could call down starlight as a weapon. About the king consort, who had been her equal in all things, never her master. About their daughter, a girl born under a lunar eclipse, marked by prophecy, hidden away when betrayal came in the form of trusted advisors. They called her Little Moon, he said softly, applying salve to the worst of the wounds. The Queen's pet name for her. The words hit me like a physical blow. Little Moon. Suddenly I was somewhere else. Smoke thick in my lungs, flames painting the walls gold and red. A woman's arms around me, running, always running. Her voice in my ear. Hush, my little moon. Hush now. We'll be safe soon. I promise. A door slamming open. The woman pushing me into a space too small, too dark. Stay here. Stay silent. No matter what you hear, don't come out. Do you understand? My brave little moon. The door closing. Screams. So many screams. I gasped, the memory fragmenting, leaving me shaking and disoriented in Kaedan's chambers. Earleen. His hand steadied me. What happened? I remembered, I whispered. Fire. A woman, she called me Little Moon. She hid me. And then, the rest dissolved into sensation. Terror, smoke, the sound of something wet and terrible. Your mother, Kaedan said gently. She saved you. She died for me. The realization settled like stones in my stomach. They all died for me and I forgot them. I forgot everything. You were a child. You survived. That's what she wanted. But at what cost? I looked up at him, vision blurred with tears. Everyone I loved died. And I lived as a slave for 16 years. What kind of survival is that? The kind that kept you alive long enough for me to find you. The way he said it, like finding me was the purpose of his entire existence, made something crack open in my chest. Something dangerous. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. Why do you care? Yes. Really? Why does the Alpha King care about one broken Omega? His hand rose to cup my cheek, and the tenderness in his eyes made my breath catch. Because, he said quietly, from the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. The mate bond is part of it, yes. But it's more than that. His thumb brushed my lower lip. You're fire and moonlight wrapped in skin, Earleen. You're everything they tried to destroy and couldn't. And I would burn down kingdoms to keep you safe. The air between us thickened. His face was so close to mine that I could feel his breath on my lips. Every instinct screamed at me to close the distance, to find out what his mouth tasted like too. Sound from outside the window. Kaedan's head snapped up, body going rigid. His hand left my face, dropping to the blade at his hip. What? I started. Quiet. He moved to the window, silent as shadow, and peered out into the darkness. I held my breath, straining to hear what had alerted him. Nothing. Just wind in the trees. The distant sound of the fortress settling for the night. But when Kaedan turned back to me, his expression was grim. We're being watched, he said quietly. By who? I don't know. But whoever it was left when they realized I'd noticed them. He crossed back to me, helping me gently back into a clean shirt he'd provided. Soft linen that didn't stick to my wounds. From now on, you don't go anywhere alone. Understand? I nodded, fear trickling cold down my spine. Your Majesty. Kaedan, he corrected. When we're alone, you call me Kaedan. Kaedan, I tested the name, and it felt strange and intimate on my tongue. If someone is watching, if they know what I am, then they'll come for you. He finished buckling his sword belt. Which is exactly what I want them to do. What? His smile was sharp, predatory. Let them come. Let them reveal themselves. Because when they do, the smile faded into something cold and absolute. I'll make them wish they'd stayed hidden. In the darkness outside the king's window, a figure melted back into shadow. Lunaria's lips curved into a smile that never reached her eyes. Her wolf surged close to the surface, turning her irises from brown to burning red. The little rat had a secret. The moonfire crest. The lost heir. The prophecy made flesh. How? Inconvenient. Rhea turned away from the window, her mind already racing through possibilities, alliances, the quickest way to eliminate a problem before it grew teeth. The Eastern Tribunal would pay handsomely for this information. And if she acted quickly, if she struck before the king could solidify his protection, well, accidents happened all the time. Especially to Omega servants who forgot their place. Her smile widened as she disappeared into the night, her wolf's red eyes glowing like embers in the dark. The hunt was on. And this time the little moon wouldn't survive. The storm came without warning. One moment the night was still, pregnant with the heavy silence that follows sunset. The next, thunder cracked across the sky like the world splitting open, and rain began to hammer against the fortress stones with violent intent. I jerked awake in the small servant's alcove adjacent to Kaedan's chambers, a space he'd insisted I occupy instead of returning to the barracks. My heart raced, disoriented by the sudden cacophony. Lightning flashed, illuminating the narrow room in stark white bursts. Something felt wrong. Not the storm. Something beneath it. Something that made my newly awakening wolf stir restlessly under my skin, whimpering a warning I didn't know how to interpret. I rose from the pallet, padding barefoot to the door that connected to Kaedan's room. My hand hesitated on the handle. He'd told me to wake him if I needed anything, but what would I say? I have a bad feeling. He was the Alpha King. He didn't need a paranoid Omega waking him because of a storm. Another crack of thunder. And beneath it was that footsteps. My hand tightened on the door handle. Then I heard it clearly. The soft scrape of metal on stone. The whisper of fabric. The carefully controlled breathing of people trying very hard to be silent. People. Plural. My wolf surged, no longer whimpering but snarling. Danger. I yanked open the door. Kaedan's chamber was dark except for the dying embers in the hearth and the intermittent lightning that strobed through the windows. His bed was a massive four-poster against the far wall, curtains drawn. I could see his form beneath the blankets, still trusting in the guards posted outside his door. Guards who should have challenged anyone approaching. Guards who were now conspicuously silent. My eyes adjusted to the darkness just as lightning flashed again, and I saw them. 5 figures dressed in black, faces covered, blades glinting silver in their hands. They moved with the fluid precision of trained killers, surrounding the bed in a coordinated pattern. One raised his blade high, preparing to plunge it down through the curtains, through the blankets, through. No! The scream tore out of me before thought could stop it. I launched myself forward, instinct overriding 16 years of conditioning that told me to be small, be quiet, be invisible. The assassin's head snapped toward me. For a heartbeat we locked eyes. His widening in surprise behind the black mask. Then everything happened at once. Kaedan exploded from the bed, already moving, the sleeping form nothing but arranged pillows. He'd been awake, waiting. The assassin redirected his blade from the bed to me. I saw the steel coming, saw death written in its arc, and couldn't move fast enough. The blade punched through my shoulder. Pain detonated through my body, white-hot and absolute. I felt the metal scrape against bone, felt my blood spray hot across my skin. My legs buckled. But before I could fall, before the assassin could withdraw his blade for another strike, Kaedan was there. His roar shook the chamber. Primal, enraged, a sound that belonged to something ancient and absolutely lethal. He caught the assassin by the throat mid-strike and threw him. The man's body hit the stone wall with a sickening crack and didn't rise. Earleen! Kaedan's voice, ragged with fury and fear. Behind you! Gasped. 2 more assassins descended on him simultaneously. Kaedan's sword appeared in his hand. I hadn't even seen him grab it, and he moved like water and lightning combined. Blade met blade in a shower of sparks. He was magnificent and terrible, every movement economical and brutal. But there were too many. Even as he cut down one attacker, 2 more crashed through the window in an explosion of glass and rain. Then more through the door. The guards outside must be dead, I realized with horror. This wasn't a random attack. This was coordinated, planned. Run! Kaedan roared at me, parrying 3 blades at once. Earleen, run! Tried. My legs wouldn't obey. The wound in my shoulder was bleeding too fast, too much. The world tilted sideways. My knees hit the floor. An assassin broke away from Kaedan, heading straight for me. His blade rose, silver edge catching firelight. This is how I die, I thought distantly. On my knees. Like I lived. Whoa. The word came from somewhere deep inside me. Not my voice, but something older, fiercer. Something that had been sleeping beneath wolfsbane and beatings and shame. Whoa. The assassin's blade descended. And I caught it. With my bare hand. Pain seared through my palm as the edge bit deep. But the blade stopped. The assassin stared at me, shocked. I stared at my hand, equally shocked because my hand was glowing. Silver light poured from my skin like liquid moonlight, wrapping around the blade, around my fingers, spreading up my arm in patterns that looked almost like flames. What? The assassin started. The light exploded. Silver fire erupted from my palm, engulfing the blade, the assassin, everything. He screamed, a sound that cut off abruptly as the fire consumed him, not burning but dissolving, turning flesh and bone and metal to ash that scattered in an impossible wind. I gasped, horror and awe warring in my chest. The fire spread, pouring from my hands, my arms, my entire body. It didn't hurt. It felt like home, like something that had always belonged to me, finally remembering how to breathe. Earleen! Kaedan's voice, but distant now, muffled by the roar of power singing in my veins. Another assassin lunged at me. The fire responded without my conscious command, lashing out like a living thing. The man vaporized mid-leap. My wolf rose inside me, not slowly, not carefully, but in a violent surge that felt like rebirth and resurrection combined. I felt her unfold, massive and ancient, shaking off 16 years of chains in one apocalyptic moment. And with her came memories. Not mine. Hers. Running through forests under full moons. Standing beside a woman with eyes like liquid silver. Mother. Learning to call down starlight. Laughing in a palace of white stone and moonflowers. Being loved, being cherished, being told we were. Moonfire. The word resonated through every cell of my body. Moonfire. The silver flames exploded outward in a shockwave that shook the fortress to its foundations. Stone cracked. Windows shattered. The remaining assassins, 4 or 5 I'd lost count, were thrown back like leaves in a hurricane. Kaedan dropped to one knee. His sword planted in the floor for balance, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Awe, fear, both. The fire coiled around me like a living creature, forming shapes. Wolves made of light and silver flame, translucent and spectral, their eyes glowing with ancient intelligence. They circled me protectively, growling at the assassins who were scrambling to retreat, terror finally cracking their professional composure. The prophecy, one of them gasped. She's the Moonfire heir, another screamed. They fled. Some through windows, some through the door. All of them running like the hounds of hell were at their heels. Maybe they were. The spectral wolves gave chase, their howls echoing through the fortress, through my bones, through reality itself. And then, as suddenly as it had come, the power ebbed. The flames guttered out. The wolves faded like morning mist. And I was just me again. Just Earleen, bleeding and shaking and so impossibly tired. The world tilted. Strong arms caught me before I hit the floor. I've got you, Kaedan murmured, cradling me against his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath my ear, racing almost as fast as mine. I've got you. You're safe now. What? My voice came out as barely a whisper. What did I do? You awakened. He brushed blood-matted hair from my face with trembling fingers. Your wolf, or power. Everything they tried to bury, you took it back. I looked down at my hands. They were covered in blood, mine probably. But beneath the crimson, I could still see faint traces of silver light pulsing beneath my skin, following the path of my veins like trapped starlight. I killed them, I whispered. The reality of it was sinking in, cold and terrible. I killed. You defended yourself. You defended me. His arms tightened around me. Earleen, you saved my life. That blade was meant for my heart. You were already awake. You knew they were coming. I suspected. I wasn't certain. And even knowing I couldn't prevent all of them from. His jaw clenched. You shouldn't have put yourself between me and that blade. You're the king. And you're my mate. The words came out raw, fierce. My fated mate. Do you understand what that means? If you had died, if you had. His voice broke. The unshakable Alpha King, commander of armies, broke on the thought of my death. I reached up with my uninjured hand and touched his face. His eyes closed at the contact, and I felt something pulse between us. The mate bond no longer subtle, but blazing bright as the fire I'd just wielded. I'm alive, I whispered. We're both alive. Barely. He opened his eyes, and they were molten silver. His wolf riding so close to the surface I could see it in every line of his face. This was Rhea. Had to be. No one else knew you were here, knew what you are. As if summoned by her name, voices erupted in the corridor outside. Running footsteps. And then Rhea's voice, shrill with false concern. What happened? We heard screams. Your Majesty, are you? She appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a silk robe, hair artfully disheveled as if she'd just been roused from sleep. Her eyes swept the destroyed chamber, the shattered windows, the scorch marks on the walls, the ash scattered across the floor where assassins had stood moments before. Her gaze landed on me in Kaedan's arms, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition. And beneath it, calculation. She'd known. She'd known they were coming. Assassins, Kaedan said. His voice deadly calm as he stood, still cradling me against his chest. 7 of them. Highly trained. They killed your guards and attempted to murder me in my sleep. Rhea pressed a hand to her heart, the picture of shock. That's impossible. Our security is compromised. He cut her off. The question is whether by incompetence or by design. Her eyes narrowed fractionally. Your Majesty, I would never. Guards! Kaedan's roar brought a dozen warriors flooding into the room within seconds. His own men, not Redclaw wolves. They must have been stationed nearby, waiting. Arrest Luna Rhea. She is not to leave this fortress. No communication in or out. She is to be held for questioning in connection with tonight's attack. You can't be serious, Rhea gasped, but her indignation rang hollow. I'm the Luna of this pack. You have no authority to. I'm the Alpha King. Each word was edged with lethal certainty. I have authority over every pack in the 7 moons, including yours. Especially yours. 2 guards moved forward. Rhea backed away, her wolf rising in her eyes. Not silver like Kaedan's, but red. Blood red. You're making a mistake, she hissed. That girl, that Omega, she's dangerous. You saw what she did. She destroyed half your chamber with uncontrolled power. She's exactly what the prophecy warned about. The prophecy, Kaedan said softly, dangerously, spoke of unity and healing. The only ones who feared it were those who had blood on their hands. He stepped forward, and even wounded, even exhausted, his presence was overwhelming. Tell me, Luna Rhea, why would you fear the Moonfire heir unless you were involved in her family's murder? Rhea's face went sheet white, then red, then twisted into something ugly. She should have stayed dead, Rhea spat, all pretense dropping away like a discarded mask. Her entire bloodline should have stayed dead. They were too powerful, too dangerous. The Eastern Tribunal did what was necessary to maintain balance. You just confessed, Kaedan said quietly, to treason and conspiracy to commit regicide. Rhea lunged. Not at Kaedan. Me. Her claws extended, aiming for my throat, her face contorted with murderous rage. She didn't make it. Silver fire erupted between us. Not from me this time, but from Kaedan. His power ancient and absolute, slammed into Rhea mid-leap and threw her across the room. She hit the wall and slid down, unconscious before she finished falling. Silence crashed down. Kaedan was breathing hard, his eyes still blazing silver. "Take her to the cells," he ordered. "Silver chains, round-the-clock guard. And someone send word to the Eastern Tribunal that I'm coming for them next." "Your Majesty," one of the guards ventured carefully, "perhaps you should tend to your injuries first." "I'm fine." Kaedan's arms tightened around me. "She's not. Get a healer. Now." The guards scattered. Alone again, Kaedan carried me to the bed. The real bed, not the decoy he'd used to trap the assassins. He laid me down with infinite care, his hands shaking slightly as they assessed my wounds. "The shoulder needs stitching," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "The hand. Gods, Earleen, you caught a silver blade with your bare hand." "I didn't think," I admitted. "I just reacted. You saved my life." He met my eyes, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. "You awakened your power to save my life. I didn't know I could. But you did." His hand cupped my cheek. "You're not the helpless Omega they convinced you that you were. You're Moonfire, Earleen. Royal blood and ancient power. And they can't cage you anymore." The words settled over me like a coronation. "They can't cage you anymore." My wolf stirred, no longer whimpering but singing, finally free. "What happens now?" I whispered. Kaedan's smile was sharp, predatory, and absolutely terrifying. "Now," he said softly, "we go to war. The Eastern Tribunal tried to destroy you once. They failed. And when I'm done with them," his eyes blazed brighter, "they'll wish they'd succeeded in killing me instead." Thunder rolled overhead, and lightning illuminated his face, beautiful and terrible and wholly mine. The prophecy was no longer a warning. It was a promise, and we were about to make it come true. The Redclaw Judgment Chamber had never seen a gathering like this. Every ranking wolf within 2 days' ride had been summoned by royal decree. Pack alphas, betas, high council members. They filled the great hall with the restless energy of predators forced into proximity, their mixed sense of dominance and suspicion thick in the air. Stone pillars rose to a vaulted ceiling painted with faded murals of ancient wolf kings. Torches lined the walls, their light insufficient against the gray morning that leaked through narrow windows. I stood in a small antechamber just off the main hall, trying to control my breathing. 3 days had passed since the assassination attempt. 3 days of healers tending my wounds, of Kaedan's guards surrounding me every moment, of whispers spreading through the fortress like wildfire. The Omega servant who wielded Moonfire. The lost Moonfire heir. The prophecy reborn. "You don't have to do this," Kaedan said quietly from where he stood near the door, already dressed in formal armor. Black plate etched with silver, a crown of twisted metal resting on his dark hair. He looked every inch the Alpha King. Powerful. Untouchable. "I can make the announcement myself. You can remain protected, hidden until..." "Until what?" I turned to face him, my hands trembling despite my efforts to still them. "Until the next assassination attempt. Until the Eastern Tribunal sends an army instead of killers in the night." I shook my head. "You said it yourself. Hiding kept me safe for 16 years, but it also kept me powerless. If I'm going to claim my heritage, if I'm going to survive what comes next, I need to stop hiding." His expression softened with something that might have been pride. "You're not the same girl who knelt on a kitchen floor a week ago." "No," I agreed, looking down at my hands, bandaged where the silver blade had cut deep, but healing with a speed that had shocked even the healers. "Moonfire blood," they'd whispered. "Moonfire healing. I'm not sure who I am now." "You're Earleen Moonfire," he said, crossing to me. His hands found mine, careful of the bandages. "Daughter of Queen Isara and King Consort Darius. Last surviving heir of the Moonfire bloodline. And my fated mate." His voice dropped lower. "You're also the bravest person I've ever met." "I'm terrified," I admitted. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. But terror hasn't stopped you yet, has it? Before I could answer, a knock sounded at the door. Your Majesty, a guard called. The court is assembled. Kaedan's eyes held mine for a long moment. Last chance to change your mind. I thought of Lunaria in her cell, still spitting poison about Omegas knowing their place. I thought of Madame Corvina, who'd been arrested alongside her, finally answering for 16 years of cruelty. I thought of the other servants. Mari, old Greta, all the nameless Omegas still cowering in the shadows, still believing they were nothing. Let's go, I said. The judgment hall fell silent as we entered. Kaedan walked first, every inch the Alpha King. His power radiating outward in waves that made lesser wolves drop their gazes instinctively. I followed one step behind, dressed in a gown his servants had provided. Deep blue silk that moved like water, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that echoed the mark on my back. My hair, finally clean and brushed, fell loose around my shoulders. I looked nothing like the servant girl who'd scrubbed blood from floors. The assembled wolves stared, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed hostility. Kaedan took his place at the head of the hall, standing before the raised dais where the judgment seat sat. I moved to stand beside him, my heart hammering so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. We are gathered, Kaedan's voice rang out, commanding absolute attention, to address matters of treason, conspiracy, and attempted regicide. His gaze swept the room. 3 nights ago, assassins infiltrated this fortress and attempted to murder me in my chambers. They were coordinated, well-trained, and possessed knowledge of royal security that could only have come from someone within Redclaw Pack's leadership. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several alphas shifted uncomfortably. Lunaria has confessed, Kaedan continued, to conspiracy with the Eastern Tribunal. She will face judgment for her crimes. But before that judgment is rendered, there is another matter that must be addressed. He turned to me, and his expression gentled fractionally. A truth that has been hidden for too long. This was it. The moment everything changed. The Omega servant you know as Bean, Kaedan said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, is not who the Redclaw Pack claimed she was. She is Earleen Moonfire, daughter of Queen Isara and King Consort Darius, last surviving heir of the Moonfire bloodline, and under my protection as both my subject and my fated mate. Chaos erupted. Denials. Several alphas lunged to their feet, their wolves rising in their eyes. The temperature in the room spiked with collective aggression. Impossible! The Moonfire line died in the War of Cinders. She's just an Omega. The prophecy. Silence! Kaedan's command cracked like thunder, forcing every wolf in the room into submission through sheer dominance. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously soft. I did not ask for your opinions. I stated facts. Earleen bears the Moonfire crest. She wields Moonfire. She carries the blood of queens. These things are not subject to debate. With respect, Your Majesty, an older alpha spoke up, gray-haired, scarred, his voice gravelly. The prophecy spoke of the Moonfire heir bringing unity or destruction. How do we know she's not the latter? How do we know she won't destroy you? A new voice interrupted. Lunaria. She stood in the doorway at the back of the hall, flanked by guards who looked uncertain whether to restrain her or let her speak. Her hands were chained in silver, her silk gown replaced with prisoner's gray, but her eyes blazed with undiminished fury. Let her burn you all like she burned my assassins. Rhea continued, her voice rising to a shriek. She's dangerous. She's the curse reborn. The prophecy warned that Moonfire power unchecked would consume the kingdoms. That's not what the prophecy said, Kaedan interrupted coldly. You twisted its words to justify your crimes. I protected the Pax. Rhea screamed. The Eastern Tribunal protected the Pax from tyranny, from the kind of power that no one should wield. She turned her wild gaze on me. Look at her. She's weak, broken. She'll never be able to control what she's inherited. And when that power turns on you, when it burns through your precious kingdoms like wildfire, you'll remember that I tried to stop it. The guards moved to drag her back, but Rhea lunged forward with supernatural speed. Her chains shattering in a burst of strength that sent guards sprawling. A blade appeared in her hand. Silver. Poisoned, judging by the black sheen along its edge. She crossed the hall in a blur of desperate fury, heading straight for me. If the king won't end this, she snarled, I will. Time seemed to slow. I saw Kaedan move, but he was too far away. Saw the guards scrambling, too slow. Saw the blade descending toward my heart, death written in its arc. And I felt nothing. No fear. No panic. Just a strange, crystalline certainty. Not this time. Power answered my call like a loyal hound. Silver light exploded from my palms. Not wild, not uncontrolled, but deliberate and focused. It met the descending blade, and the blade simply dissolved. Metal turned to dust, then less than dust, scattering on an impossible wind. Rhea stumbled, her momentum carrying her forward even though her weapon was gone. She crashed into the barrier of light I'd instinctively raised between us and recoiled with a scream, her hands blistering where they'd touched moonfire. I stepped forward. The assembled court gasped as one. Even Kaedan froze, watching. You called me nothing, I said, and my voice didn't shake, didn't waver. It rang clear and strong across the judgment hall, carrying a resonance that made the torches flare brighter. You called me weak, broken, cursed. Rhea scrambled backward on the stone floor, cradling her burned hands, her face twisted with hatred and terror in equal measure. I was nothing, I continued, taking another step forward. The light around me intensified, not burning but illuminating, turning the hall from dim gray to brilliant silver. I was nothing because you told me to be. Because you beat the truth out of me. Because you poisoned my wolf and buried my name and convinced me I deserved pain. Spectral wolves began to materialize around me, the same ghostly guardians that had appeared during the assassination attempt. They prowled the edges of the hall, their eyes glowing with ancient intelligence, their presence making every wolf in the room instinctively bow their heads. But the moon remembers, I said, my voice rising. The moon remembers who I am. What I am. What my bloodline has always been. Not a curse but a promise. A promise that those who abuse power will answer for it. A promise that the weak will not stay weak forever. The moonfire crest on my back blazed to life. I felt it burning through the silk of my gown, visible now, radiant, undeniable. The crescent and flame symbol projected onto the wall behind me, 50 feet high, limned in silver fire. I am Earleen Moonfire, I declared, and the words resonated through the hall, through the stone, through the very bones of every wolf present. Daughter of Isara the Starlit, heir to the Moonfire throne. And I am done being afraid of you. The power crested, rolling out in a wave that brought every wolf in the hall to their knees. Not through force, not through domination, through pure, undeniable recognition. This was what alpha power felt like when it came from divine blood. This was what it meant to carry moonlight in your veins. The Redclaw pack bowed first, from the lowest omega to the highest beta, their heads touching the floor in instinctive submission to something greater than themselves. The visiting alphas followed, their pride no match for the weight of prophecy made flesh. Even the guards, even the servants watching from the doorways. Everyone, except Kaedan. He remained standing, his storm-gray eyes locked on mine, and the expression on his face stole my breath. Not fear, not ambition, reverence. Then, slowly, deliberately, the Alpha King, ruler of the 7 moons, commander of armies, the most powerful wolf in the known territories, lowered himself to one knee. Not in dominance, not to claim me. In acknowledgement. Your Majesty, he said quietly, but his voice carried. The throne recognizes the Moonfire heir. My power guttered, the weight of what he'd just done crashing over me. He'd given me legitimacy no amount of my own declaration could provide. He'd acknowledged me as his equal, as royalty in my own right, not just his mate. The prophecy wasn't about one ruler. It was about two. Unity. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. I turned my gaze back to Rhea, still cowering on the floor, and felt nothing but pity. You were right about one thing, I told her softly. The moonfire power is dangerous, but only to those who deserve to fear it. I lifted my hand and silver light coalesced into chains, not metal but pure solidified moonlight. They wrapped around Rhea's wrists, gentle but unbreakable. Take her, I said to the guards. Let her face judgment for what she's done, not just to me but to every Omega she brutalized. Every servant she broke. Every life she destroyed in service to her fear. The guards moved forward, hauling Rhea to her feet. She was sobbing now, all her fire extinguished, finally understanding what she'd unleashed by trying to kill me. As they dragged her away, I turned to address the court. The prophecy, I said, letting my power ebb but not disappear entirely, was never a curse. It was a promise. A promise that the broken kingdoms would be united, that the weak would be protected, that power would serve justice instead of crushing it. I looked at Kaedan, still kneeling, and held out my hand. Together, I said. He took my hand and rose, his fingers threading through mine, the mate bond blazing bright enough that several wolves gasped at the visible silver light connecting us. Together, he agreed. Then to the court. The Eastern Tribunal will answer for their crimes. The Moonfire bloodline is restored. And any who stand against the unity we bring. His smile was sharp. Will learn why prophecies are not made lightly. The hall erupted, not in protest this time but in acknowledgement. Howls rose from every wolf present, a chorus of acceptance and allegiance that shook the rafters. I stood there, hand clasped in Kaedan's, moonfire still glowing faintly beneath my skin, and realized. I wasn't the broken girl they'd tried to erase. I was the promise they'd failed to kill. And the kingdoms would never be the same. Later, after the court had dispersed and the formalities were done, Kaedan and I stood alone on the balcony overlooking Redclaw territory. You were magnificent, he said softly, his arm around my waist. I was terrified, I admitted. I know. He pressed a kiss to my temple. That's what made it magnificent. I leaned into him, watching the sun set over lands that would soon be part of something larger, something better. What happens now? Yes. Now, he said, we rebuild. We hunt down the Eastern Tribunal. We free every Omega still suffering under pacts like this one. He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face. And we fulfill the prophecy, not through conquest, through healing. Together, I whispered. Always together, he agreed. And when he kissed me, finally fully with all the passion and promise that had been building between us, I tasted moonlight and smoke and the future we'd fight to build. The prophecy was no longer a warning. It was a vow. And we were just beginning. Chapter 6. Queen of the Moonfire. The royal citadel had been built to honor the moon. I stood in the preparation chamber, staring at my reflection in a mirror of polished silver, and barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Gone was the servant girl with matted hair and hollow eyes. Gone was the Omega who'd believed she was nothing. In her place stood someone I was still learning to be. The gown they'd dressed me in defied description. Starlight silk, they called it. Fabric woven with threads so fine they seemed to capture actual moonbeams, shifting from silver to pale blue to white as I moved. The bodice fit like a second skin, embroidered with a moonfire crest in crystals that caught the light. The skirt flowed like water, pooling around my feet in waves of luminescence. But it was the back that stole my breath. The gown was cut to reveal the mark between my shoulder blades, the crescent and flame no longer hidden but displayed proudly. The moonfire crest glowed faintly against my skin, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. You look like your mother. I turned to find the high seer standing in the doorway. She was ancient, her face lined with centuries of wisdom, her white hair braided with silver thread. Her eyes were the milky white of the completely blind, yet somehow she saw more than anyone. You knew her. My voice came out smaller than I intended. I was there the night you were born. The seer moved into the room with surprising grace for someone who couldn't see. Under a lunar eclipse, with all 3 moons aligned for the first time in 100 years. Your mother held you and wept, not from sadness, but from joy so profound it frightened her. The seer's weathered hand found mine. She knew you were destined for great things. She also knew the cost. My throat tightened. She died for me. She died protecting the future. The seer squeezed my hand gently. You are that future, child. Everything she sacrificed, everything she suffered, it led to this moment. The prophecy fulfilling itself not through blood and conquest, but through healing and unity. I'm terrified I'll fail her, I admitted. That I'll fail everyone. Then you're exactly where you need to be. The seer smiled. Fear keeps us honest. It's arrogance that leads to ruin. She released my hand and stepped back. The ceremony begins when the moons reach zenith. Are you ready? I looked back at the mirror. At the woman in starlight silk who carried moonfire in her veins and scars on her soul. At the last daughter of a murdered bloodline, about to be crowned queen. No, I said honestly. But I'll do it anyway. The seer's laugh was like wind chimes. That, my dear, is what courage actually looks like. The grand hall of the royal citadel could hold 1,000 wolves comfortably. Tonight it held 3 times that many. Packs from across the 7 moons had traveled for weeks to attend. Alphas I'd only heard whispered about. Betas whose territories spanned hundreds of miles. Omegas who'd been freed from conditions like mine and now stood with their heads held high. They filled the hall from wall to wall, a sea of faces and scents and barely contained power. The air thrummed with collective anticipation. I stood in the antechamber just off the main hall, listening to the murmur of thousands of voices. My hands shook despite my efforts to still them. Breathe, Mari whispered beside me. She'd been chosen as one of my attendants, my friend, the only one who'd known me when I was nothing. She wore a gown of pale gray silk, her dark hair swept up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You've faced worse than this. Have I? I tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. This feels more terrifying than the assassins. That's because you can't fight this with moonfire. Old Greta stood on my other side, resplendent in deep purple, her milky eye somehow seeing straight through me. This requires something harder. Faith. In yourself, in your mate, in the future you're building. The sound of bells echoed through the citadel. Deep, resonant, marking the hour. It's time, Mari whispered. The doors opened. Music swelled as I entered the grand hall. Not instruments but voices. 100 wolves humming in harmony. The sound primal and beautiful and ancient. Erased every hair on my body. The aisle stretched before me, lined with representatives from every pack. They stood in ranks, heads bowed in respect, creating a path that led to the raised dais at the far end. And standing before that dais, waiting for me, was Kaedan. He wore armor of silver and black, polished to a mirror shine, etched with runes of protection and unity. The crown of the Alpha King rested on his dark hair, a circlet of twisted metal that seemed almost alive, catching the light from hundreds of moon globes suspended from the ceiling. But it was his eyes that held me. Storm gray, blazing silver, fixed on me with an intensity that made the rest of the hall fade to insignificance. I walked toward him, each step measured, fighting the urge to run. Toward him or away, I wasn't sure which. The wolves I passed bowed as I moved by them. Not the forced submission of the oppressed, but genuine acknowledgement. Some whispered blessings. Others wept openly. I saw faces I recognized. The servants from Redclaw, now free. Warriors who'd fought beside Kaedan in the campaign against the Eastern Tribunal. Alphas who'd pledged their loyalty to the new order we were building. And there, near the back, in chains of silver and shame, Lunaria and the surviving members of the Eastern Tribunal, forced to witness the coronation of the woman they'd tried to erase. I didn't look away. Let them see what their fear had created. Finally I reached the dais. The High Seer stood at its center, her white robes glowing in the moonlight. Kaedan descended the steps to meet me, offering his hand. I took it, and the mate bond flared so bright several wolves gasped. Together we climbed to stand before the seer. Wolves of the 7 moons, the seer's voice rang out, amplified by the acoustics of the hall. We gather under the alignment of moons to witness the fulfillment of prophecy. The lost moon has risen. Blood and fire unite, and the broken kingdoms shall be made whole. She turned to me, her blind eyes somehow meeting mine with perfect precision. Earleen Moonfire, daughter of Isara and Darius, last heir of the Moonfire bloodline, you stand at the threshold of destiny. Behind you lies suffering and silence. Before you lies a crown and the weight of kingdoms. You pause. Do you accept the burden of leadership? Do you vow to use your power not to dominate but to heal, to protect the weak, to challenge the corrupt, and to stand as a beacon for those still trapped in darkness? My voice came out steady, clear. I do. Do you accept the crown of unity, acknowledging that true strength lies not in standing alone, but in standing together? That you will rule not above your people, but among them, as servant and sovereign both? I thought of every Omega still scrubbing floors, still swallowing poison, still believing they were nothing. I do, I said louder this time. The seer turned to Kaedan. Alpha King Kaedan Arden, you have ruled alone for 20 years. Now you offer to share your crown, your power, your throne. Do you accept Earleen Moonfire as your equal in all things? Not as possession or prize, but as partner and co-sovereign. I do. His voice was rough with emotion. She was never mine to own, only mine to stand beside. The words hit me like a physical blow, beautiful and terrible in their sincerity. The seer smiled. Then let the bond be sealed. From somewhere behind her, attendants brought forward a crown. Not metal, crystal. Hundreds of pieces of lunar crystal woven together in an intricate lattice that caught every ray of light and scattered it into rainbows. The crystals had been harvested from the Moonfire Palace, recovered from the ruins, preserved through decades, waiting for this moment. Kaedan lifted the crown with reverent hands. His eyes held mine as he spoke the ancient words. By moonlight and starfire, by blood and by choice, I crown you Earleen Moonfire Arden, Luna Queen of the 7 moons. May your reign bring healing. May your strength protect the vulnerable. May your light drive back the darkness. He placed the crown on my head. The world exploded in silver brilliance. The mate bond, which had been building between us for weeks, finally sealed completely. I felt it snap into place with almost audible force, a connection so profound it transcended physical sensation. I felt Kaedan's heartbeat as if it were my own. Felt his love, his pride, his absolute conviction that we would change the world together. The lunar crystal crown blazed with inner light, responding to my moonfire. Silver flames erupted from my skin, not destructive but illuminating, spreading across the hall like aurora borealis made manifest. Every wolf present felt it. The prophecy fulfilling itself. Power recognizing power. Unity forged from broken pieces. The hall erupted in howls. Thousands of voices raised in acknowledgement, in celebration, in hope. The sound shook the citadel to its foundations, rolling out across the territories like thunder. I turned to face them, my people now as much as they were Kaedan's, and raised my hand. The howling ceased instantly. I stand before you not because I was born to rule, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the hall, but because I was born to survive. I was beaten, poisoned, told I was worthless. I was forced to my knees and taught that pain was all I deserved. Silence, absolute and breathless. But I survived, I continued. And if I could survive, if I could rise from servant to queen, then so can every Omega still suffering. Every wolf told they are less than. Every person convinced that their voice doesn't matter. My eyes found the freed Redclaw servants in the crowd. Starting today, no Omega in the 7 moons will be forced into servitude. No wolf will be poisoned into submission. No one will be told they are nothing. The hall erupted again, but this time in cheers rather than howls. This crown, I touched the lunar crystal, represents not my power but our collective promise, that we will build something better, that we will heal. The 3 moons hung full and perfect in the sky, their combined light turning the world silver. I could see for miles, forests and rivers and distant mountains, all bathed in lunar radiance. Overwhelmed? Kaedan asked softly, his arms wrapping around me from behind. Completely. I leaned back against him, feeling his heartbeat through the armor. I keep expecting to wake up in the servants' quarters and discover this was all a dream. If this is a dream, then we're having the same one. He pressed a kiss to my temple. You were magnificent tonight. I was terrified. I know. His arms tightened. You're always terrified. You do it anyway. That's what makes you magnificent. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight paint the world in shades of silver and shadow. The Redclaw pack has new leadership, Kaedan said eventually. Alpha Dimitri, he's young but good. He's already started implementing the reforms you mandated. And Rhea, exiled to the wastelands, along with what's left of the Eastern Tribunal. His voice hardened. They'll live out their days in the place they sent so many others to die. Poetic, really. Justice, not vengeance. Felt right. What about the other packs? Asked. The ones that still resist the changes. They'll come around. He sounded confident. Some through persuasion, some through pressure. But they'll come around. Change doesn't happen overnight, Earleen. But it's happening. I turned in his arms to face him. The crown felt strange on my head, heavy with responsibility, light with crystal, but I was learning to bear its weight. Thank you, I said softly. For what? For seeing me when everyone else saw nothing. For believing I was worth saving. His expression softened impossibly. You saved yourself, my love. I just had the privilege of witnessing it. He cupped my face with both hands. You were never mine to own. Only mine to stand beside. And I will stand beside you through every battle, every triumph, every moment of doubt, until the moons fall from the sky. I rose on my toes and kissed him, pouring everything I couldn't articulate into the contact. Love and gratitude and promise and hope. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. Ready to change the world, my queen. I smiled. A real smile, full and unafraid. Together, I said. Always together, he agreed. Far below, in the Citadel's great courtyard, Mari stood with old Greta and the other freed Omegas, watching the 2 figures on the balcony. She did it, Mari whispered, tears streaming down her face. She actually did it. She was always going to, Greta said softly. Some wolves are born to be broken. Others are born to break their chains and use them to build something new. Above them, framed against 3 full moons, the Alpha King and his queen stood silhouetted in silver light, 2 halves of a prophecy finally made whole. Years later, when they told the story, they would remember it like this. She was the servant they tried to erase. The girl they silenced with beatings and poison. The wolf they bound with chains of shame and fear. She scrubbed blood from stone floors and believed she was nothing. Until the day an Alpha King looked at her and saw everything. Until the day she looked up and remembered who she'd been born to be. Until the day silver fire poured from her hands and the moon remembered her name. Earleen Moonfire. Daughter of queens. Breaker of chains. Luna of the 7 moons. Her scars became her crown. Her silence became a roar that shattered kingdoms. Her pain became the foundation for healing that would echo through generations. She was not rescued. She was resurrected. And in the age that followed, the age of Silver Moon, they would say that the prophecy was never about destruction. It was about the kind of strength that only comes from surviving the unsurvivable. The kind of power that only comes from choosing compassion when cruelty would be easier. The kind of love that only comes from seeing someone's scars and calling them beautiful. She was Earleen Moonfire Arden, and her light would never be extinguished again. In the royal citadel, under 3 full moons, a queen stands beside her king and watches the dawn break over territories that were once broken, now unified. In the servants' quarters of 100 packs, Omegas lift their heads and speak their names without fear. In the dungeons where Lunaria wastes away, a woman who chose cruelty learns what it means to be forgotten. And in the ruins of the Moonfire Palace, flowers begin to grow again. Silver blooms that only appear under moonlight, proof that some things can never be completely destroyed, only transformed. The prophecy is fulfilled. The lost moon has risen, and the age of healing has begun.